What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode here of the BlockHash Podcast, your number one resource for all that is happening across the emerging tech space. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. Today, I'm joined by another wonderful guest, Marvin, co-founder and CEO of Maestro. Marvin, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have you on today, man. How you doing?
Great. Yeah, happy to be here. Looking for this discussion, Brandon.
Likewise. Would love to learn more about Maestro and excited to dive into it and have a discussion with you about it today. Before we do, would love to also know a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind sharing a bit about maybe your background, your backstory, and how you kind of got into blockchain and what your entry point was like.
Yeah. So like most people in blockchain, I come from a very eclectic background, and I have actually a degree in mechanical engineering, which I never used. I went straight into AI. I got fascinated around 2015, 16 into like the early days of deep learning. And I moved to San Francisco, and that's where a lot of the top AI research was happening, and where like the algorithm behind ChatGPT, which is the transformer, was invented in 2016. And I actually met a lot of the co-authors and kind of played around with like this early iteration of deep learning. And then I went into biotech. So I worked many years in a company called Freenome, and we did early cancer detection. And so we processed large amount of data, genomics data, built early kind of deep learning models to predict if people had cancer. And that's why I kind of got the experience of working on very technical kind of fields at the intersections of multiple disciplines, working with PhDs and researchers, working with very talented engineers, also working with a large amount of data and building algorithms and processing that data and building that infrastructure. And then around 2020, I got interested in blockchain, with the DeFi summer of Ethereum, like a lot of people, and kind of dive deep into that new realm, getting comfortable with understanding these on-chain financial applications. And first as a consultant, working on different projects on Ethereum's, Cosmos, Cardano, and then eventually, building, co-founding my own company with my co-founder, Valderes, Maestro, which is a blockchain infrastructure platform, really focused on UTXO blockchain. So we got started with Cardano, and now we have a very strong focus on Bitcoin. And the goal is to allow people to build really large-scale financial applications on Bitcoin that kind of brings our legacy financial system, on chain.
Excellent. Now, it sounds like you have quite a background there, and it's always exciting getting to hear everyone else's perspective and how they got into the industry, given that blockchain is so young still these days, and there's so much innovation, and it's still so fun and wild, and it's fun to see it really all come together and everyone's different entry points. So, and then regarding Maestro, what would you say is like your guys' core mission essentially? Like what problem or problems do you guys really want to try and solve?
Yeah, so the long-term vision is that just like the internet, blockchain infrastructure is going to completely transform how we do finance. It's going to completely transform how we do global commerce, and it's going to completely transform how we use money. So I think initially people get into Bitcoin and blockchain as like money or investment, but the scope is way bigger, right? This is going to change how we do international exchange, international commerce, trading, and how we do finance, how banks are going to be working under the hood. They're essentially changing their backends. So as regulations come into place and we get more of a regulatory compliant environment for these regulated institutions like banks, they will have to switch out their entire backend from a legacy system that, to be honest, hasn't changed in decades and is extremely inefficient. A lot of middlemen, a lot of fees are being paid, a lot of entities. And it's kind of crazy because like you can watch Netflix in 4K video and the internet works at lightning speed, but then you go to your bank and then you're still like old school rails and it takes ever to do everything. So it's like going from the landline to the mobile. We're going through an infrastructure shift, and that only happens once every couple of hundred of years, right? So we're kind of living through that big transformation. And so the Maestro's mission is to accelerate that transition and be the infrastructure, running the critical infrastructure for that new type of commerce, and being kind of like this software middleware that allows these new businesses to leave the legacy system and plug into this new system.
Yeah, it's crazy the financial technology that we are stuck with today at times. Like I send a Zelle through Bank of America to a family member domestically a few days ago, and it was for like a very small, trivial amount, and it was to like a family member. It's not like a random person, and they held it for like a week. And then I also live in Colombia, and I send remittances back and forth all the time. And if I do a wire, it's like $40, and if I do through a payment app, it's going to be like another $5 to $10, and that's even for like really small transactions, like $30, $40. Like if I need to pay rent, if I need to pay for some food or like this or that, it's like the fees, the latency, it's awful today still. But it's exciting to see like a lot of the changes, like in the U.S. we have the Genius Act, Clarity Act. A lot of banks like Bank of America, J.P. Morgan Chase are looking at stable coins now. PayPal has their own stable coin. Like there's a lot more infrastructure starting to come into place. Just curious if you have any thoughts on that development, like on the U.S. side, and how good that is in terms of incentivizing better infrastructure for the industry.
Yeah, so you gave some good example, right, around payment and international remittances. That's a common problem that we experience, but you can imagine that the rest of the financial system is just as broken, and sometimes we don't interact with it because we're not in the financial industry. But if you are, a banker, and you have to create, you have to underwrite loans, like the entire loan architecture and system is a nightmare. If you ever had to get a mortgage for your house, it's hundreds and hundreds of paperwork that you have to manually sign, and it goes through so many middlemen that are getting these high fees, and there's just no reason why taking loans should be so burdensome. And to be honest, the US has one of the best financial system in the world, right? You just need to leave the US and go to another country, and it's even worse, right? So loans can be done better, the way we offer people kind of credits, and even like IPOs. IPOs are a total mess, right? It's extremely centralized. The banks are able to kind of like monopolize the IPO market, and basically whether the IPO is successful or not, they make a huge amount of fee every time they do an IPO, right? So it's these very centralized and kind of like winner takes all monopolies that haven't changed. And again, the US is one of the best IPO markets, and it's still broken, right? I can go on like exchanges, options, private equity. When startups trying to like know what to do with this private equity, that SpaceX or OpenAI, like they have these secondary markets for all these private stocks. That's also a mess that is not accessible to us, right? And then trading equity, right? Trading equity at 4 p.m., on New York time, you can't trade them anymore, and then you can't trade them on the weekend. It just doesn't make any sense, right? So I think we're at a tipping point where we've ridden that standard as far as we can, but now, like with the technology that we have, we realize that the internet is at light speed. Twitter news can move so quickly. Finance needs to upgrade to just the level of the rest of the industry, and so I think that's why we're seeing these sweeping legal laws are coming into place, because we know, and everyone knows, that it needs to change. So I'm very optimistic about the US and kind of making the right thing. But also I'm optimistic about what's happening outside the US. I think you're seeing a lot of adoption, much more, maybe more like bottom up and ground up, but that's where you change the culture, right? If you go to like Turkey or you go to Argentina and you say like 30, 40, 50% of people are using stable coins to pay each other, eventually it changes the culture so that it applies pressure on these local governments to be like, we need to upgrade the infrastructure, or we're just going to be going off and doing our own thing, right? And then kind of like bypass the legitimate system. So I think that's what the US wants to avoid, is having people either leave the US or run some parallel financial markets, and kind of like, let's bring everyone together, and all the old players and all the new players, and then create like a fair playing field where everyone can come together. And so for us as a business, it's very exciting, because that means a lot of companies we work with that are like blockchain native finally has the authorization to really kind of execute their full vision and start kind of like expanding their product. But it's also exciting for the legacy companies. You mentioned Bank of America, you have Shopify, Stripe, you have all kinds of like financial institutions that now finally feel comfortable to be like, let's bring some blockchain features and blockchain-based products into our consumer base, which they still have millions and millions of Americans, right? Chase has millions of Americans' bank accounts. Chase also has a lot of like small businesses, that are using Chase banking. So any kind of on-chain features that they bring onto Chase suddenly has this like kind of national adoption. But they need help. And so I think that's where Maestro comes in, is we're building kind of that middle layer. It's really B2B. It's really enable them to upgrade their backend to these new primitives and give them access to their current client base while maintaining the same user experience that they're used to. Because very often these traditional finance institutions, they don't have the expertise, right? They probably will struggle to like hire the talent that will know how to build these blockchain software, and maybe they don't want to own it themselves, right? They'd rather use a service provider that already has that expertise. And I think that's where we're coming in. We're building institutional ready and institutional first kind of like Bitcoin infrastructure rails that allows you to be like, hey, if I want to be an early mover and start offering Bitcoin deposits, Bitcoin saving, Bitcoin yield onto my customers, right? Then I can go with Maestro and kind of like bring that on, and obviously make yourself stand out from your peers and your competition, and attract more clients, more deposits, and kind of jump on that train, early on.
So with that in mind, what type of solutions can you highlight that Maestro has cooked up in this realm, in this regard? And then also, like, do you guys have any use cases that maybe you can give as an example, like some of these solutions in action? I'm sure people would love to kind of know about that too.
Yeah, so there's just different levels to it. We're essentially working on the full stack of kind of infrastructure. We got started more with the first wave of adopters, right, which were people running validators. So we initially started as running validators and actual nodes for all these different networks, and basically securing these networks at the lowest level possible. Then, around 2021, 2022, we got a lot of developers coming to us and says, we need data, we need on-chain data. So we got really good at indexing on-chain data. So every single transactions, every single blocks, every single events that happens on-chain is processed through our high-performance indexer. And it allows app builders to build applications. So these are wallets, decentralized exchanges, lending protocols, marketplaces. And so that's kind of like where we've got our main bread and butter, is kind of this all-encompassing, like very granular on-chain data that we process for people, and then we kind of give that access as like a data layer for applications. And now we're moving up the stack even more, and we're allowing kind of build entire frameworks, right? So we're looking at ways to integrate smart contracts functionality into Bitcoin and provide more programmability. We have different partnerships of people really innovating and extending Bitcoin with programmability and the way which will allow you to do more than just payments with Bitcoin, but allow you to actually build like actual applications, like an exchange on Bitcoin, or a stable coin, or like a lending protocol. And so we're kind of bringing that up as well through the stack, and kind of like standardizing these primitives, so that now when we work with institutions and corporations, then we can do things like treasury management, right? So a lot of these institutions, they've been buying Bitcoin at a very large scale. But right now, I call it the first wave of adoption is just exposure to Bitcoin. So you see Bitcoin as like a reserve asset, a way to hedge, and kind of diversify your treasury. A bit like why people will buy gold. And you've seen in 2025, this explosion of corporate treasuries buying hundreds of billions in Bitcoin, and holding it on the balance sheet, right? And so I think that's the first wave of adoption. The second wave is, now you have all this Bitcoin on the balance sheet, how do you put your Bitcoin to work, right? And you want more than just exposure to the price. You want to be able to use it internally, or even as a way to raise funds. So let's say SpaceX has $4 billion in Bitcoin. They could use that as collateral to take out loans, take out credits, right? They could use that to like hedge different things that they're doing to balance their books. They could use that to even like pay people internationally, and kind of like do deals this way. So right now, none of that infrastructure is available. And even if these corporations and institutions wanted to do something with their Bitcoin, there's nothing that they can do because the infrastructure is not there. And so I think that's what we're providing is kind of this primitive so that we can extend this treasury management solution to allow you to now turn into a full-blown financial platform where now I can take loans on my Bitcoin, I can borrow Bitcoin, I can earn yield on my Bitcoin, right? And kind of make it like a much more like productive yield-bearing asset that plugs into the rest of the ecosystem.
Absolutely. What do you imagine the future kind of looking like here of Bitcoin and the financial ecosystem? Is, we continue to see infrastructure get built out, more institutions not just wanting to buy it and put it in their treasury, but wanting to maybe make it accessible. Like, so if someone wanted to go to Starbucks and they wanted to spend their Bitcoin on a cup of coffee, or they wanted to transact for this or that, or daily expenses, whether it's rent, whether it's paying for a business permit or your car loan. Like, I imagine like there's so much more that can be done here in terms of allowing Bitcoin and other cryptos and blockchain to be accessible to more people. Bitcoin obviously being that starting point. Where do you see that going in the future? And like, do you think it can be like an actual like payment method like it was supposed to be in the original days?
I think not yet. I don't see Bitcoin as a payment method right now. I see it more as a store of value. Like, I think the gold analogy is really good because you hold gold because you think either it's going to go up, at the very least, it's going to maintain its value. And I think that's what Bitcoin is at. We're not at a level of adoption where it can be used as money because of the volatility. So I think that's why we're seeing massive adoption of stablecoins. I think stablecoins is a home run success in terms of product market fit because it solves so many problems at once, right? It allows you to do cross-border payment instantly. It's significantly cheaper than anything else. It both replaces like international wire transfers, the SWIFT system. It replaces credit cards, MasterCard, Visa, right? So I think it is so good in itself that we're going to see this dual component where it's going to be mass adoption of stable coins and mass adoption of Bitcoin. And together, I think they're going to be the foundation of this new financial system. And so you're going to use stable still as a way to transact and do commerce, but much more streamlined, much faster, and then Bitcoin as a way to kind of invest long term. And like I said, like almost it's like owning property, right? It's like owning property in New York. You want to buy your block in New York. There's only limited amount of blocks in New York, and you can use that to finance your business, where you can charge rent to lend it to other people, or you can take loans or finance it. And same thing with Bitcoin. I think businesses can do a lot of things as if they're owning property and kind of manage their books and finance themselves this way. And then the stable coin will be kind of to streamline the payment aspect of things. But even these two things right now, for retailers, we know how to use it, but even like you have to be kind of, how to use a wallet and stuff. If you're a regular person, still like wallet interface is not great. I think we need to abstract that away behind like email logins, and we have very good authentication with like our fingerprints or our eyes. Like we have biometric login authentication that should be good enough for like people managing wallets without having to know how to remember their passphrase. And you need that level of UI for banking as well. They need the level of compliance, of security, and integration into their system. And so I think that's really what we're building out. In the same way that Shopify completely transformed e-commerce. If you wanted to sell something online before, it was a nightmare because it's like, how do you create a credit card integration? How do you create your basket? How do you do like shipping and accounting? Now you can create your own little business on Etsy or whatever, and then you can use Shopify to then create your own like e-commerce kind of checkout, and now you can sell online, right? And so it's going to be the same thing here, where banks are still going to do what they're doing right now, but now they want to accept Bitcoin. They want to accept stablecoin payments. Who's going to be that B2B kind of infrastructure middleware that kind of allows you to be like plug and play and say, now you're integrating to Bitcoin and stables, and you can start offering these features to your clients.
Yeah, you brought up a good point there with abstraction. I think that's something that needs to be done more in the space. It's too complicated at times for the ordinary person. Like, when you're asking them to swap this and stake that and bridge this and have this wallet and connect to that, it's like, most people are used to simplicity and, having everything work, like you said, with your fingerprint or your iris scan, or having your Gmail connect to everything for you so you don't have to remember a password. I think there needs to be a lot more abstraction done within the world of blockchain so that it's just easier for people to interact. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Stablecoins will probably be an easy integration into a lot of these legacy systems, but definitely for Bitcoin and other cryptos forward beyond that, I imagine that'll be something that's really key. Does Maestro kind of help in that regard as well, in terms of laying that infrastructure foundation, finding ways to abstract different elements here and there, or do you work that into any of your products or solutions?
We'll really focus on the Bitcoin side. So I think that's kind of like our differentiator, is we're noticing that the amount of Bitcoin that's being bought and is sitting idle within corporations and institutions is just growing exponentially. And so there needs to be some better treasury management solution that then allows you to plug it into financial applications. So we're working with custodians, Bitcoin custodians, that are already taking custodies of this Bitcoin. And by the way, these institutions, they don't deposit their Bitcoin in a wallet. It's not even in a hardware wallet, right? These are held by custodians that have like these multi-sig networks where it's called an MPC wallet, where you have multiple signatures. And so it's a very kind of like specific way of managing your custody, where multiple people have to sign to move anything in and out. And the thing is that type of custody solution is not compatible with the DeFi and protocols that we use on Ethereum or others. And so you need to create a new generation of financial applications that are on chain that integrate more natively with Bitcoin custodians. And that's what we're focusing on, is creating that link where we could offer people these frameworks where they can create vaults, like yield strategies, that will allow them to say, okay, you can earn 8% on your Bitcoin through this kind of like algorithmic strategy. You can earn 12% of your Bitcoin by doing this kind of mining lending credits. And then under the hood, it integrates directly into the custodians that are holding this Bitcoin. And they're the ones kind of managing this Bitcoin on the behalf of corporations and asset managers. And so I'm getting kind of into the weeds, but that's the missing link that is preventing a lot of that Bitcoin from being put to work, essentially. And that's why it's sitting idle. And that Bitcoin is not going to go to your retail DeFi protocols, right? First of all, they're not going to bridge them to Ethereum and take the risk of having wrapped Bitcoin. But also, even if they did want that, they don't want to be using their Bitcoin in these highly public kind of lending and pools and exchange and dexes, because it mixes liquidity that is from every country under the in the planet, and it could be money that is tainted, money that comes from hacks, maybe money that comes from countries that we don't agree with. And so in terms of regulatory compliance, it's a bit of a nightmare for these institutions. So they do need kind of like a financial environment that is on chain. So similar to what we have on EVM, exchanges, lending, credit, but in a way where who's your counterparty, where the liquidity is coming from, and that, okay, I'm working with only American or financial institutions that are registered, and so you're able to like really minimize the risks. And if there is ever a hack or an exploit, you actually know the identity, right, of all the counterparties, and so you can actually trial the person that did something wrong. So it's a new generation of finance that is kind of like blurring the line between centralized finance, TradFi, and DeFi. It's kind of in a hybrid of the two. And that's what we'll see the demand is right now for the people we're working with Bitcoin custodians, Bitcoin asset managers, and we're kind of working towards building these kind of basic framework and building blocks that will allow them to do that.
Excellent. I also noticed you guys had a developer hub on your website. I'm curious, like, what you have in terms of comprehensive documentation for developers that maybe are looking to also build on Maestro. What's kind of there and available that they can kind of consume if they want to start creating stuff?
Yeah, so if you're a developer, we literally have everything you need to build, any kind of applications. Like I was saying before, like some of our customers are some of the top wallets top dexes, lending protocols in the space. A lot of your favorite DApp and DeFi application that you use is powered by Maestro. We process billions in value through our APIs, and so these are like blockchain indexers. We have also a very powerful mempool indexer. For Bitcoin, it's very powerful. It's very important to be able to index the mempool. We index the meta protocols, runes, ordinals, BRC20. We also have complex like event management kind of notification system. So you can do like event-driven kind of like webhooks notifications. We have price tracking. We track all the prices and the trades happening on every DEXs. So you have real-time, price tracking of the trades. And like a couple of other things like wallet managers and transaction managers. And then we have a very kind of great analytical dashboard where you can basically monitor everything that happens on your app. So all the people that are using you, which endpoints you use the most, and really kind of get a high level view of monitoring the health of your app and kind of like the usage and the growth over time. And so it's been a tool that even like really talented team that could build all of this themselves rather use us, because it's like kind of huge burden off their shoulder where they can trust us to process all that data for them and monitor all that information, and then they can focus on the application level, on the user level, and kind of trust us for running the infrastructure 24/7. And we have really high reliability and uptime. We have over, I think the last 90 days we had like exactly like 100% uptime. We didn't have any issues. So it's really like rock solid infrastructure, and we've been doing this for years. So that's kind of what I was saying. Our bread and butter is these developer tools that allow us to right now, I think, power over 200 different businesses and applications on Bitcoin and other chains. And so, yeah, if you're a developer, kind of check it out. I'm sure you'll find something that that will really help you, save time, save money, and kind of build faster on strong foundations.
Awesome. And then what else is on your guys' roadmap here in 2025 for Maestro? What are some things you guys want to focus on or people should be looking forward to? Do you have any announcements or any updates that might be upcoming that people might be interested in? What can you kind of share with us?
Yeah, so we're doing a lot of work with Bitcoin L2s and other kind of institutional chains. So we announced recently a partnership with ICP, and they're doing really well with Bitcoin DeFi. I think they processed over 1.1 billion in Bitcoin transactions, and they're using Maestro to process, to like index a lot of that Bitcoin data. We have a couple of other Bitcoin L2 big partnerships that we'll be announcing as well. One of them is Middle as well, which is an EVM based kind of roll up on Bitcoin that allows you to run smart contracts without bridging. We have also a partnership with Arch Network. We've been helping them from day one, really running the infrastructure. And then actually, I think today we announced a partnership with Canton Network. We've joined as a validator. And so Canton is a kind of institutional specific chain that, is working with Bank of America, the NASDAQ, BitGo, some of the biggest institutions out there, and really making like an institutional specific blockchain. And we got selected to join as a validator to secure and support the network. So a lot of more of that coming, and also a lot of new products specifically tailored to custodians, to institutions, and to asset managers working with Bitcoin.
And then will you guys be at any events, engagements, conferences, any plans to kind of get around and see the people?
Yes, this year I've never been to so many conferences. So we took a little break for the summer, but it's coming back again. So yeah, I think fall we have a couple of conferences. We have Bitcoin Asia, Token 2049, and maybe like another one. So yeah, if you're there, come hit me up, and happy to chat.
Where can people go to learn more about Maestro, keep up with all the updates and the details, new solutions that are coming out, use cases, website, best place to go? Do you have socials, community?
Yes, so our website is gomaestro.org. But the best way to keep in touch with the latest is Twitter X. So, check out our Twitter page. We post every day. We have weekly updates and new partnerships. We're really ramping up a lot. Sometimes we do like 2 partnerships a week. So I think it's the best place to know what's the latest. And then we also organize a bunch of X Spaces We have one coming up next week. We had one yesterday. That's also a great way where we invite a lot of our clients and our users, people, really great entrepreneurs and founders that use Maestro to build their application, and kind of hear it from there how they're innovating on Bitcoin and how they're using Maestro under the hood.
Awesome. Then if anyone wants to connect with you as well, are you available on like LinkedIn or X? Do you have any profiles?
Yes, you can find me on X. It's at Maestro, at Marvin DeFi. Otherwise, we have a Discord and a Telegram. So I'm also very responsive if you DM me. These are the three.
Excellent. Well, Marvin, I appreciate the conversation today. It's been really great learning more about Maestro and what you guys are up to. Keep me up to date on everything. Would love to have you back on here again in the near future. Maybe if we can meet up at one of these events, we can do an in-person interview as well. It'd be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, keep me posted and take care. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes. Take care.